I'm director of the Muslim Society's Global Perspectives Initiative here at Queens, which is something that was founded just a few years ago that aims to promote knowledge and understanding of Islam, the Muslim world, from an academic perspective, to mobilize those resources on campus, to expand those resources and courses on campus, and to have public outreach and bring some scholarly expertise to questions, contemporary questions also, about what's going on in the Middle East, the Muslim world, and so on and so forth. We have a website, you know, this project started with a very small grant from the principal's office. We have to acknowledge and thank him for that. But we also look for further support if you're interested in supporting these kinds of activities and expanding them here on this campus. We organized and sponsored this panel discussion in conjunction with this dispossessed but defiant exhibit. We're really pleased to be able to do that. And I'd like to thank especially Hind for all of the work she's done.
Yep.
But also to acknowledge, you know, in addition to her, she's also fabulously mobilized a team of volunteers who've also been working really hard on her out. So I'd like to thank the variety of people who've been helping Hind put this together. Before going forward, I just did want to say that next month, if you didn't already know, is Islamic History Month. And Muslim Society's Global Perspective is partnering with the local Kingston Islamic History Month Committee and the Islamic Society of Kingston on a number of events. You should check out their website. I think these things will be posted very soon. But here on Queens campus, there will be 2 events that are organized and co-sponsored with Muslim Society's Global Perspective. I'm giving a talk Thursday, October 13th. But I think more exciting, more interesting, as an outgrowth of a class I'm teaching with Dr. Ariel Salzman called Islamophobia, From Crusaders to Donald Trump. We're trying to do a lot of community engagement and outreach as well. And so one thing we'd like to do in the context of Islamic History Month is convene an open forum and discussion called Building Solidarities, Combating Islamophobia, that will have the participation of myself, Ariel Salzman, Imam Yassin Dwyer, and perhaps Imam Jeffrey. Okay, so he's confirmed. So please do look for these events. Visit our website. You can like us on Facebook and learn more about things that we're doing. Well, it gives me really great pleasure to welcome 3 people to this discussion. I think I'll introduce them in the order that we'll go into speaking. So first is Grace Batchloun. She is a Palestinian Canadian and co-founder of Canadians for Justice and Peace. Born in Lebanon to a Greek mother and Palestinian father, and has a degree in computer science from Concordia University. And she's here representing Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East that sponsored this and organized this exhibit. And if you don't know about that organization, you should know that it's a nonprofit national organization whose mission is to empower Canadians from all backgrounds to promote justice, development, and peace in the Middle East and here at home in Canada. And it exists to inform the public, challenge the media, and encourage politicians to take principled stands on respect for international law, equal expectations for all, and the belief that violence does not lead to solutions. So they do speaking tours, photo exhibits, publish fact sheets, and if you'd like to learn more after this, there's a table with their literature. Please avail yourself of that, and feel free to talk to Grace afterwards about how you can get involved and what the work of this organization is. So in addition to her, we have Mark Peperick, who's head of Global Development Studies and a professor also in African history here at Queen's University. He's just published a recent book. I noticed he brought one here, the Welcome to Greater Arundel, which I think the subtitle is Histories of Environment, Health, and Gender in an African City. He's a well-known scholar of the histories of sexuality in Africa, in Southern Africa, and he'll be talking to us a little bit about South Africa. So we want to welcome him as well. And finally, we have Bob Lovelace, who's well known to this community since he's been teaching Aboriginal studies here since 1995 at Queen's. He was also co-founder, and the initial director of the Four Directions Aboriginal Student Center here at Queen's. He's engaged in a number of research projects that work with the needs of the Aboriginal community. And his core interest is the process of re-indigenization. So if you could welcome all of our panelists. So I've asked each of them to speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, after which we'll have a round maybe for the panelists to draw on some comparisons with one another in each of their cases, and then we'll open the floor up for questions, comments.
And special thanks to Hind. Not too many people know that Hind contacted us January 2015. So from January 2015, she had the idea, I would love to have that exhibition at Queen. And I'm really delighted that she worked very hard and partnered with others to make it happen, and it is a reality. Yes. So in this beautiful hall, you are exposed to 120 compelling pictures. Pictures that span 150 years. It captures the dispossession of 3 people. So it starts first with the First Nations, it goes to the Palestinians, and then blacks of South Africa. It captures their dispossession, but it captures as well their inspiring resistance. Now, the CGPME Foundation, Professor Adnan talked about CGPME, which we focus on advocacy. We have a sister organization called the CGPME Foundation, which is a charitable organization. They are the ones who produced the exhibition. So the CGPME Foundation, which produced the exhibition, did not set out to pick up pictures that shows parallels of dispossession. But as we put the exhibition together, the parallels just jump at you. The parallels of dispossession, even though every people is unique, but the forms of dispossession are very common among all of them. And it is the common struggle for human rights, equality, respect, and recognition. So each indigenous people is unique, but they all faced challenges like land loss, expulsion from traditional lands, destructions of their homes and communities, discriminatory policies and laws, pressures to assimilate, barriers to integration, military occupation, restrictions of movement and residency, detention and imprisonment, cultural dispossession, destruction, and denigration of cultural identity, and as well, criminalization of peaceful protest, as you see it with all 3 people. In the case of Palestinians, they have experienced and continue to experience every single imaginable form of dispossession. It started almost 70 years ago, and it continues daily under a brutal occupation, and a brutal occupation of almost 50 years as of next year, of brutal occupation in both Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. So tonight, I'm touching on the dispossession of Palestinians. So I'm going to do a couple of things. First, I want to draw your attention to what Palestine was like prior to 1948 and dispel some of the myths and untruths. Second, I'd like to share with you the story of my own family's dispossession. And third, I'd like to touch briefly on other forms of dispossessions, like home demolitions, imprisonment, and racial laws. Yes, it could be discouraging, but I'm going to leave you on a hopeful note at the end. First, what was Palestine like before the creation of the State of Israel? Was it barren? Was it a desert? Was it unpopulated? No. I'm seeing your heads. No. Absolutely not. It's a resounding no. History has shown us that in all processes of domination and subjugation, the dominant group always tries to impose his own version of history. We need to reclaim that narrative, even if the dominant group is uncomfortable or in denial about those realities. We need to set the record straight. So that's the reason why in this exhibition, you will see pictures from 1889, things that the media does not show you. Pictures to dispel a number of myths, like Palestine was a land without people, or Israel, in quotes, made the desert bloom. So you've got pictures of women coming back from a conference in Egypt, Palestinian women painting potteries, doing pottery, glass blowing, soap factories in Hebron. You have pictures of bounty agriculture, Palestinian agriculture, and all the Palestinian pictures are on this side. You have pictures of the city of Jaffa, taken between 1889 and 1914. Jaffa, it's a port of 3,500 years old. It's a city thriving and prosperous with a significant urban population of 70,000 people. So Jaffa was a key center of Palestinian commerce. You will see pictures of fishermen. You'll see orange groves, olive farmers. Do you know that it's Palestinians who bred the Jaffa orange, which is known for its sweetness and its thick skin? That's why it's such a great fruit to be exported. In 1939, a total of 15 million crates of Jaffa oranges were exported to Europe. So let's set the record straight. Jaffa and other Palestinian cities were populated and had a thriving and prosperous and rich economy. That's number one. That's what we want you to see first. Now, let me tell you about my dad and our story, my story of dispossession. So my dad is from Jaffa. My dad, they had lots of land. And they had 1 kilometer, according to my dad, they had 400 acres. And when you look, what's an acre? 400 acres means 1 kilometer by 500 meters. Imagine a rectangle of 1 kilometer of land by 500 meters, where they grew oranges, tangerines, lemons, grapefruits, apricots, and apple. My dad and his father farmed and exported oranges to England. In Jaffa, they had a large store and a wheat grinding factory of 6 floors. My dad went back in 1993, and the factory is still there. And in Jerusalem, they had another warehouse. They were importing coffee from Brazil, dates from Iraq, walnuts and pistachios from Turkey, onions and potatoes from Lebanon and Holland, fine wheat from Australia. They would sometimes buy the whole inventory of ships that were coming to the Jaffa port. They even had a contract to sell the British Army onions, potatoes, and rice. Now, in 1947, the United Nations partitioned the land of Palestine. Even though Palestinians in 1947 owned 94% of the land, according to the partition plan, they allotted them 43% of the land. And you will see a beautiful picture of the dispossession of Palestinian land to your right here, to my left, under the wall, under the picture of the wall. So Jaffa was an Arab city of 70,000 people, and Jaffa was slanted to be part of the future Palestinian state. But the Jewish militias were not happy to have an Arab state in the middle of the future Israeli state. So what they did, they besieged the city over 3 weeks, surrounded it from all 3 sides, bombarded it nonstop for 3 weeks. That people, there was no way to get out by land. The only way to get out was to go in the water, jump on one of those fishing boats, and leave either to Gaza or to Lebanon or to Egypt. And you will see a very, very powerful pictures of the flight of those 70,000 inhabitants of Jaffa from the port of Jaffa. You've got a picture on this side. So out of the 70 people, only 4,000 people were left in Jaffa. And my father was one of those, my father and his family were one of those 700 to 7, and these are conservative estimates, let's say 750,000 of Palestinians who were expelled from their land and who had to flee, just take whatever they could take with them, grab their kids, and just flee. And many, like my father and grandfather, they thought, oh, we'll go away just until things are quiet, and then we will go back. Few weeks later, they knew that they will never go back to their land. And my grandfather, knowing that he lost everything that he owned, everything that he worked for all of his life, had a heart attack and died. So imagine you live comfortably here in Kingston, and then you've got some militias who come around and they say, you know, they are bombarding wherever you are living, and you've got to flee, and you've got to go to the south of the border. And you have no passport, you don't have the papers, you don't have work, you don't have a job, you don't have anything, and you cannot go back. That was the case of many Palestinians, and many of them had to walk for weeks, if not months, on foot, just to get to somewhere else safe. And you see a beautiful, beautiful picture that I love in this exhibition of a grandfather in a refugee camp in Jordan, a grandfather with his granddaughter. You see the destitution, but you see the tenderness. And you see flies on their faces, and they are so tired to even brush away the flies. So I really encourage you to see it. So my father left Lebanon. He went to Lebanon first, then he went to Saudi Arabia, he went to Yemen trying to get some work. And then after a few years, he went back to Lebanon. Now in Lebanon, in Palestine, they had their own stores, so he wanted to open a small store in Lebanon. But being a Palestinian, you can't own property. So he bribed a priest. We are Christians, but we are Palestinians. So he bribed a priest. At that time, he gave him $1,750 so he could get a birth certificate to say that his father was born in Lebanon. And that was the only way for him to be able to function and make a living in Lebanon. And there were waves of refugees. That was the first wave. We're talking 1947, 1948. Of over 750,000 people. In 1967, you had another 300,000 people, and it is continuous. So when you look at that map of Palestine, and I have lots of cards on the table, I encourage you all to take, that shows you, no matter how you look at it, day after day, Palestinians are losing their land. Be it 1948, be it 1967, be it losing land to the wall. A 700 plus kilometer wall, 8 meter high, inside the Palestinian territories. All the colonies, we don't call them settlements, the colonies that Israel keeps grabbing and grabbing and grabbing. So continuously, the Palestinians are being dispossessed. And the dispossession doesn't stop here. I'm talking about land dispossession. But with the dispossession, there is the loss of identity as well. It's only in 2002, after what happened in Jenin, that I reclaimed my identity. I used to say I was Lebanese all along, because if we were to say we were Palestinians, twice my dad was kidnapped. We just couldn't say we were Palestinians. It's only after what happened in Jenin that I reclaimed my identity. They started saying I am Canadian. So until now, when we're talking about dispossession and we're talking about the cultural dispossession, it even continues inside Israel. Right now, inside Israel, they don't call them Palestinians. They insist on calling them Israeli Arabs, as if, Palestinians did not exist. So this is a form of cultural dispossession, destruction, and denigration of cultural identity. I'll go very quickly talk about maybe other forms of dispossession, and then I'll pass it on to my colleagues to talk about First Nations and South Africa. But another form of dispossession is the destruction of homes and properties. This is the most heinous of policies. According to Ilan Pape, between 1948 and 1960, Israel systematically demolished 531 Palestinian villages. Since then, according to Israeli Human Rights Organization, 60 to 70,000 homes have been demolished. Detention and imprisonment, according to the Palestinian Committee of Prisons Affairs, currently at least 1,000 Palestinian minors between the ages of 11 and 18 have been detained by Israel since January 2016. 70 children from East Jerusalem are placed under house arrest. Imagine children. Currently, there are 7,000 Palestinians in jail, 600 administrative detainees. Discriminatory policies and laws, according to Hanin Zabi, who is a member of the Knesset, there are 80 racist laws on the books in Israel. 80. I looked up some of them. Imagine there is a mandatory minimum sentence for stone throwers. Stone throwers, okay? Nakba law. People are not allowed to talk about the Nakba, what happened to the Palestinians, and there are very heavy consequences. So in conclusion, I did touch on few forms of dispossession, but the list is much longer. The title of this exhibition is Dispossessed but Defiant: Indigenous Struggles from Around the World. We must remember that the struggle against South African apartheid had many allies, people who were neither black nor Africans, but who became indignant at the terrible injustices faced by blacks and others in South Africa. Knowing what we know, we need to be angry, we need to be indignant, but we need to act. And that's why in 2002, when I started acting and I did few humanitarian projects, in 2005, I co-founded Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. So I really encourage you, continue to be informed, continue to be angry, continue to be indignant, but act, find a way to make a difference. And I really encourage you, if you, after this session, take the time to look at the pictures. And if you appreciate what you're seeing, if you could support the work of CJPME, please do so. Because this exhibition, after Queens, it's going to London. The French exhibition right now is in Saskatoon, and from Saskatoon is going to a high school in Ontario. There's lots of demand for this exhibition, and I want to send it anywhere they ask for it, but it takes support. So I encourage you, at the end, come see me. If you could support us, please do so.